Hello and welcome. My name is Hugo Curry and I'm a Year 12 high school student at the Riverina Anglican College in Wagga Wagga, Australia. This is a series of brief interviews with some of the most amazing physicists from around the world. I'm passionate about physics and will pursue a career in physics and engineering, so I'm honoured to be able to ask a few questions of some inspirational physicists. I really want to thank them all for generously taking the time to chat and, importantly, passing on their rich insights. Hopefully other students with an aptitude for physics can take inspiration and guidance from their experiences and insights to shape the next generation of physicists. Today I'm speaking to Professor Zdenka Kunchik. Professor Kunchik attained a science degree with first-class honours in physics at the University of Sydney, followed by a PhD in theoretical astrophysics at the University of Cambridge. Professor Kunchik is a Professor of Physics and a Fulbright Future Scholar at the University of Sydney, where she leads an interdisciplinary research team working on projects that bridge physics, medicine, biology, neuroscience, and engineering to solve complex problems. Thank you for taking the time to share your thoughts and experiences today.
You're very welcome, Hugo. Thanks.
So firstly, I'm interested, what drew you to a career in physics and what excites you about physics?
Yeah, so I guess in school I'd always been good at maths. But it wasn't until I got into university where I had to choose a degree, and I chose science because I like science. And physics was always this one thing that always challenged me. I actually wasn't good at it naturally. I had to work for it. But that made it more rewarding, you know, when you're working on a problem and then you suddenly get it and you think, oh, wow, it's like a little mini intellectual adrenaline rush sort of thing. And so that's actually what got me hooked. I just wanted more of that. So I continued on with physics and majored in physics. And I guess what maintained my excitement, the number one thing was having the opportunity to do research. Once I got the taste of research, I just couldn't turn back, and it still excites me today.
Yeah, nice. So your journey to a physics career, you kind of touched on a little bit there. I'm interested to know whether it was like a direct path from high school to university and then a career, or was it less direct in kind of the parts in that?
Yeah, definitely the latter. It wasn't direct. You know, my parents are not educated. They didn't even finish high school. And so I didn't even know what a university was until I got to year 11 and people started talking about it. And I thought, oh, I better get in on this. And, you know, I'd always enjoyed school anyway. So I felt like, yeah, I wanted to do more and learn more. So, you know, I decided, yes, I want to go to university. I want to do science. And at the same time, see, I grew up in Canberra, so don't hold that against me, but I grew up there. At the same time, I also wanted to go somewhere. I didn't just want to stay and, you know, continue where I was. And so I started applying for university places elsewhere, and my number one choice was Sydney University. It was kind of like, yeah, I've got to go there. And so it was really, yeah, it was an indirect path. And it was motivated, I guess, by this aspiration to go to Sydney University. So that kind of drove me, yeah.
Yeah, nice. So I know that you, like you said, do a lot of research. And from that research perspective, what do you see on the horizon that would inspire the next generation of physicists, I guess?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think there's two aspects to this, because in research, there's kind of two components. One is looking at, you know, fundamental scientific research, and the other one is looking at applied research. So if I just touch on the first one, in physics, there are some major unsolved problems, yeah, really challenging problems. You know, what's the nature of dark matter? No one knows, you know, and it's such a huge problem. And at the same time, there's also this huge problem with the standard model of physics, standard model of particle physics, you know, the subatomic particles that make up the stuff in the universe. And I think just yesterday or the day before, there was another discovery that kind of really opened up this sore wound around how, you know, this gap in our understanding of the standard model. And we also know that our gap in understanding the standard model is also somehow connected with, you know, our this unknown dark matter that exists out in the universe as well. So there's all these things that are kind of, we don't know about, and it's kind of hinting that they're connected, but we just can't, we just can't get our finger into it. And so that there's a huge problem there in terms of fundamental physics. And another related aspect to that as well is unifying gravity and quantum mechanics as well. That's another major challenge. So some people like to think that those three challenges, I guess, there's this one solution to solving all of those problems. Maybe it's a modern version of a grand unified theory, we don't know. Or there could just be lots of other jigsaw pieces that we've yet to find before we, uncover even more problems that need to be solved. So that's kind of, in a nutshell, what some of the major challenges are in fundamental physics. And I guess they're mostly theoretical problems, but I have to say that, you really do, at the end of the day, even if you're interested in theoretical physics, you still need to work with experimental data, because you need to be able to constrain your theories. You just can't come up with, fancy ideas and expect people to believe it. Now, on the other side of things is the sort of more applied applications-based type of physics. And I guess there, that is much more experimental, but it's really motivated by how can I take my understanding based on physics of this thing that I've been working on and then translate it into some technology that can be used in the real world. And so there, I think there's a lot of opportunities for people doing physics research to really contribute to some of the major problems in the world. Climate change, for example, physics can contribute so much to solving that problem. Another problem related to that as well is energy resources. We're in the 21st century, we're still using 20th century energy resources. So the whole renewable space, making energy more efficient and so on. And I guess another third area where physics can really contribute, as well as other sciences, is in health and medicine. We're always going to need new technologies in health and medicine. And if you think about, medical technologies, they've always come from fundamental scientific and indeed even physics research. The very first Nobel Prize in physics was awarded for Röntgen for his discovery of X-rays, which subsequently led to the discovery of the DNA double helix structure, led to X-ray CT, so on and so forth. So even though the physicists themselves might not be the people making the next generation scanners, they're the ones that are uncovering the physics necessary so that, perhaps engineers can then take that and create these new technologies. So I think just like with energy, in terms of medicine and health, we are still very much in the 20th century. We really need some new technologies to help medicine, propel itself into the 21st century.
Yeah, definitely. And I think physics is very like that. It's everywhere, so it can be applied to everything.
Absolutely, yeah.
So I'm interested to know what skills you've relied on most throughout your career to help you as a physicist.
Yeah, so I guess it's changed quite a bit. So when I was a uni student, and I guess, that's not really a professional part of my career, but, it kind of starts there. So when I was a university student, it was very much just relying on my maths abilities. And, you have to, you can't do physics without doing maths. But at the same time, throughout that, and particularly throughout my PhD, I learnt the value of, the conceptual part of physics. There's no point being really good at maths and then doing physics unless you first have that conceptual understanding of physics. And a lot of that conceptual understanding really comes down to just sitting and thinking about a problem that's captured your imagination. You think, I wonder what's going on there, and just thinking about different possibilities. And before any math starts, you just got to think about it really deeply and think about what could be going on, through your knowledge of the laws of physics, through your knowledge of other things, and then maybe throwing away any assumptions that you might have made along the way. So I would have to say that, doing a research degree i.e. PhD, has really made me learn the value of thinking conceptually, and also, you know, sometimes there's a bit of intuition involved. You know, you kind of have this idea and you think this has got to be it, and so you come up with a plan to try and test your idea, and you know, sometimes you're right, sometimes you're wrong. But I have to say, a lot of the time, you know, you might think of an idea and then you discover someone's already published it and you think, oh, that's too bad. But on the other hand, you know, it confirms that the way you were thinking about it is correct. So that's actually a good thing. So it's thinking conceptually, it's thinking in a way that, you know, with conviction, I guess, you know, trying to be confident in the way that you're thinking about it conceptually before you do any maths or anything like that. And I would also have to say, you know, being confident to think about things and do things that are different. In doing research in any scientific discipline is very, very competitive. And, you know, there are big scientific groups all around the world that are doing amazing and fantastic stuff, but it's very competitive. And you can very easily get trapped in some topics that are very, very popular and, you know, seem really, wow, fantastic. But at the end of the day, the real breakthroughs are going to come when people have this ability to kind of just shift a little bit and just think about something in a slightly different way, or draw on some other skills and insights that they might have gained by doing something completely different. And also having the confidence to do that, you know, do something different and don't be afraid to do something different that other people aren't doing.
Yeah. So you mentioned briefly your PhD in theoretical astrophysics, and now you're doing research on other physics topics. Are you able to describe that dynamic and perhaps give an insight into the transdisciplinary nature of physics, I guess?
Sure, yeah. So first of all, as you pointed out quite rightly earlier, Hugo, once you know physics, you can do anything, because physics is everywhere. And no matter what you look at, you can interpret it in terms of physics, you know. So once you've got that understanding, it's kind of like, wow, you kind of feel special because you have this deep insight into how something works. And so in principle, you could do anything. In practice, it's a different story, because as I was saying before, once you go down a research pathway, there's a lot of pressure to just stick and specialise to one thing. And when you're doing your PhD, you do specialise on one topic. So I did astrophysics. I loved astrophysics. I still do like astrophysics very much. And I did publish quite a bit of work, quite a bit of research in astrophysics. But I got to a point where I felt, well, yeah, I don't just like astrophysics. I like doing other things as well. And I like to learn new things. And also astrophysics is not very grounded to the real world. So, you know, it kind of sounds romantic, but at the end of the day, as a physicist, I kind of feel obliged that I should be doing something that's going to help some real world problems. So I kind of started, you know, thinking about other areas that I could contribute to. And the way in which I was able to make that transition is not just with my knowledge of physics, you know, you can apply the laws of physics everywhere, but also applying my, I guess, technical skills and expertise in modelling and simulation. So again, thinking about some problem is that you want to contribute to, there's a physical system involved. What are the components of that physical system? How do they interact? You know, can you model it? Can you simulate it? And you know, make some contributions that way. So that enabled me to kind of cross over from astrophysics, where part of my research in that field was in the area of high energy astrophysics. So there I was looking at X-rays and gamma rays being emitted from really powerful galaxies. And I was modelling the processes that produce those X-rays and gamma rays. And for the astronomical observations to get the data that then constrains the models, all those telescopes have to be launched into space. You can't do ground-based X-ray gamma ray observations. So they're all launched into space. So you have these massive X-ray gamma ray detectors that get launched on these space missions. And you have to simulate everything before you launch anything into space, just to make sure you know what your sensitivity is, you can actually detect something. Now, the software that's used for those kind of detector simulations was developed by CERN, because they use all of that for their own high energy particle physics detectors. And it's also used for medical physics applications. And so I was able to take my knowledge of that software and those types of simulations and just translate it over, again, just pivoting a little bit, different applications, same software, but pivoted over a little bit for medical physics applications.
Yeah, nice. So you have so many amazing research activities going on. Are you able to tell us a little bit about what you're currently working on?
Yeah, so I guess probably my priority project at the moment, and the one that keeps me up at night, is a project where I'm trying to, I guess, demonstrate what I call synthetic neural networks. And synthetic means that they're actually made. So there's a physical structure to them, as opposed to artificial neural networks, which are in software. So synthetic neural networks, we make them out of nanowire networks. And these are nanowires that self-assemble together to create these networks. And surprisingly, they exhibit, because they're electrical systems, so when you electrically stimulate them, they exhibit some really interesting electrical responses that really look like, you know, neuron type responses. And so when I discovered this, my now collaborator introduced me to these systems, I was like totally blown away, because with all the effort that's going on in AI at the moment, and all the effort that's going on in trying to implement AI algorithms onto novel neuromorphic hardware, they still can't capture all the intricate dynamics that's going on in the real brain that is actually responsible for information processing. So there's a lot of stuff that AI can do that we can't do. We will never be able to do some of the things that AI does. But the approach that's taken in AI is quite different from what biological neural networks do in the neocortex. So what I'm working on really is, I guess, to try and demonstrate a different way, different from artificial neural networks, of information processing, that from the insight that we've gained from these synthetic neural networks, and to show that you can actually do some interesting learning tasks on these systems, and to show that they operate in a different way from AI. So for example, there's several problems that AI faces. One is called catastrophic forgetting. Once you train an AI model, you can only use it for that very narrow task. But, you know, our brains do things simultaneously all the time. Like you and I are talking here, we're looking at each other, but, you know, we're kind of aware of other things and so on. You know, we can talk and walk at the same time. We can drive a car and think about other things, listen to the radio and whatever. So AI can't do that. So that it can only stick with one task that it's been trained for. If there's new data that comes in for something else, you've got to completely retrain it. So that's that problem. A related problem is the problem of multitasking that I just alluded to as well. So it can't do that either. And another big restriction is that it can't handle an environment that's continuously changing, which our environments do all the time. So being able to respond to a continuously changing environment is a huge, you know, I guess, characteristic of the way that the real brain works. So in this project, we're really trying to identify all the things that AI can't do, that the real biological neural network can do. And we're trying to do that through this synthetic neural network, which is kind of like a real neural network, but without the biology. So it's really based on the physics of these devices. And I guess what I'm trying to show is that the underlying nature of intelligence is really physical. You can actually reproduce it through physical processes.
Yeah, that's so interesting. Like, I've done a lot of research and reading into AI, and I've, you know, made the typical car that teaches itself how to drive using AI
Yeah.
on my computer, and all sorts of different things. In fact, I did a maths assignment where I looked at making AI more efficient, like convolutional neural networks more efficient. But
Yeah.
I had no idea that this was like a thing. I had no
Yeah.
idea.
That's research.
Yeah, that's so cool. Yeah, I had no idea.
So, I mean, research is all about what the next thing is going to be, not what's happening now. So there's a lot of people doing AI research, that's fine. But, you know, you've got to always think about what is the next thing? You know, what are the existing technology? What are the limitations of existing technologies? And so that's kind of like, you know, what's pushing me in that direction.
You can only imagine the applications of something like that. That'd be incredible. Yeah.
So actually, I've kind of gone almost full circle because one of my applications is to space. So currently, you know, there's a lot of data, more and more data being generated on satellites, and this is starting to become a real problem because at the moment, this data is being beamed back down, you know, downlinked back down to Earth.
Yep.
And if you want to use AI, you've got to use the cloud on Earth. So it has to be beamed down. Data is processed, maybe there's an AI model that's generated, and then it gets beamed back up again. Extremely inefficient. The downlink, uplink bandwidths are very, very limited. And also you've got to wait till the satellite gets, you know, passes through where the ground-based infrastructure is in order to, you know, send that information. So thinking forward, you know, this is just with taking a few snapshot images. We're now at a stage where, you know, we have video capabilities. And at the moment, on Earth, you know, yes, you can use convolutional neural networks and whatnot to do amazing things if you've got unlimited cloud resources. But if you're up in space on a satellite, you don't have that luxury. So now you're in a heavily resource constrained environment. You need low power resources. You need very efficient neural network processing in order to be able to process those images, but more importantly, you know, moving forward into high definition, high frame rate videos as well. So that's kind of like a killer app.
Yeah, no, that sounds insane. Yeah. So my Year 12 class, well, my school runs both the International Baccalaureate and the HSC, and so both the Year 12 IB and HSC physics, both cohorts are all boys, which I find surprising, especially given, say, for me in chemistry, I've got a lot of strong female classmates. So I'm interested to know from your perspective, what are some of the barriers and challenges that you see in changing the perception that physics is for males, I guess?
Yeah, I guess, you know, it is still disappointing to hear that there is still this disparity, especially at the high school level, certainly at the university level. So I teach a lot of first year physics, for example, and we don't see that gender disparity. Actually, it's pretty equal, I have to say, in first year physics. And, you know, by third year, it probably starts, you know, we probably end up with slightly more males than females. So it is, you know, it is still disheartening to hear that, you know, at high school level, there still seems to be something that's preventing females from, you know, going forward with physics. So I think it's a very complex problem, and I don't think there's just one reason for it, and there's not one solution either. I think part of the problem is because there are very few role models, and there always have been. You know, I probably have slipped through the cracks because, as I mentioned earlier, I didn't really know what university was. I didn't really have any sense of that. So I just did what I wanted to do. But, you know, when you're in high school and you've got a lot of peers, and, you know, it's very easy to get swayed by your peers, you know, especially if a couple of them say, oh, I'm going to do chemistry, and you kind of end up doing chemistry because your peers are doing it. So there's those other complications there in that age group. Certainly by the time you get to university, there's less of that effect there. And, you know, you do have some choices in terms of what you can do for your degree. So things do change a bit there. But nevertheless, I think having more role models is important, more visibility of female role models. I think that is improving. I certainly have seen those changes, you know, in the last, I would say, you know, 5 years in particular compared to the way it was 10 years ago. And I think at the high school level, you know, it's such an impressionable time that the role model issue will probably have a bigger impact there than it would have at the university level, I would say. So
Yeah.
That's my take on it. Yeah.
Yeah. So to continue on with that a little bit, are there any experiences from your journey in physics that might inspire the next generation of women in physics?
Yeah, so I would say, you know, probably a highlight for me was getting into Cambridge University and going there. It was just the best experience. It was just, I'm so glad I did it. I'm so glad I attempted it, you know, because it's very easy to have some kind of goal and think, oh, I'd love to be able to do that. But then to actually, you know, take it through and really try and go for it is, you know, that's another thing.
Yeah.
And so, you know, you just have to keep trying and don't give up, because it's very easy if you feel like, oh no, I'll never get in, you know, you lack the confidence or whatever. So you just have to, you know, within yourself, and I think this is a very personal thing. I don't think anyone, you know, your friends or family or your support group might say, just keep doing it. But at the end of the day, it's up to you within yourself to say, I'm going to do it. I don't care if I fail. I'm going to try it, and you know, maybe I can try again, and so on. So I think for me that experience was transformational, and I have to say, you know, when I did get in, I was like so excited, but then I started getting worried because I thought, oh, I'm probably going to be the dumbest person, you know. So, but it wasn't like that at all. You know, I got there and there were other PhD students from all around the world, and they were just like me, and I had a blast. I managed to get a degree out of it as well, so that was a bonus.
Yeah. Okay, so this is the last question, and it's so. Do you have any final pearls or pitfalls to offer high school students that have an aptitude for physics?
Yeah. So if you have an aptitude for physics and you're thinking about doing it at university, that's fantastic, but don't limit your options. So even if you think, oh, I'm going to do general relativity because I just love it, you know, that's fine, that's great, but don't do it at the expense of excluding everything else. You know, when you're a student, particularly in your undergraduate years, you have so many choices to learn, so many cool topics, and you should just expose yourself and lap it all up. So just keep all your options open and learn as much as you can about lots of different things. You can make those other decisions later on about, you know, specialising if you decide you want to do research further down the line. I also want to say something about, so that was specifically, you know, for students who have an aptitude for physics, they kind of know I'm going to do this. I also want to say something for students who don't have an aptitude for physics, especially if they don't have an aptitude for it and they think that they're never going to be able to do it, so why bother? Because I think it's really important to realise that physics, I'll go back to my previous point, physics is a really conceptual science. You know, as I was saying before, you've got to sit and think about it. The maths is secondary. You know, you just, that aspect of it, the conceptualization of a problem is a very creative process as well. So even if you think, I don't have an aptitude for physics because I can't do the math anyway, I don't understand the equations, just forget about that. Just, you know, if you're interested in the ideas around physics, you know, if you're reading like popular science books and you think, oh, that's really cool, or you know, science fiction or something, oh, that's really cool, just keep hold of those concepts and just think about things conceptually, and don't discount what you might possibly be able to do in the future. Don't burn your bridges. So again, keep your options open, even if you don't have an aptitude for physics, or you think you don't have an aptitude for physics.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for such a rich insight into the world of physics. I really appreciate you taking the time to inspire the next generation of physicists, and I'm sure that those that listen will share my appreciation.
You're very welcome, Hugo. Thanks very much for having me, and I hope I see some of you doing undergraduate physics at the University of Sydney soon.
I'm sure there'll be a few.